At 6:35. The door opened right on time. Before the cooking fumes had even cleared. She walked in on those 4-inch stilettos. Click against the tiles. Like a countdown clock. She tossed her black leather bag onto the sofa. Pulled out a chair. Sat down. And reached for the braised ribs I'd just set on the table. Rebecca. I pulled the plate back. Not your dinner tonight. She glanced up at me. Her eyes were blank. Cold. Like she was looking at an incompetent employee. That's exactly how she used to look at me in the conference room 3 years ago. I'm hungry, she said. What's that got to do with me? I yanked off my apron and threw it on the table. This is my house. This is my food. You're my ex-boss. My ex-neighbor. And an ex-everything else. You show up at my door at 6:30 every night. Sit down. And eat like this is a cafeteria. What's your deal? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out that little brown notebook. Leather cover. Edges worn white. Creases across the front. It had clearly been used for a long time. Look at the first page. She slid it across the table. I didn't take it. Rebecca. Don't start with me. I pointed at the door. I'm telling you one last time. I'm not your husband. Your husband ran off with someone else 3 years ago. Go find him. I'm just a coder barely scraping by on my mortgage. I don't owe you meals. She pulled the notebook back. Flipped it open. Glanced at the first page herself. Then closed it. Slowly. Her fingers traced the leather cover. The ribs are too salty, she said. My blood pressure shot through the roof. This was the 73rd time. For 3 months now. This woman had been showing up like clockwork. Between 6:35 and 6:40 every evening. Margin of error under 3 minutes. She'd sit at my table. Eat my food. Rinse her plate in the sink. And leave. Not a word more than necessary. Occasionally she'd critique the dishes. With the same tone she'd used in project review meetings. I'd asked her why. She said, your place is close. I said, can't you order takeout? She said, your cooking's better than takeout. I said, and why should I cook for you? She pulled out that little brown notebook and said, look at the first page. I never did. Not because I wasn't curious. Because something told me I shouldn't. 3 years ago. She'd been our company's CEO. I'd worked under her for 2 years. Then the company collapsed. Her husband ran off. And she'd been pulled off a rooftop twice. She looked hollowed out. I'd felt sorry for her. But that was before she started showing up for dinner every night. Rebecca. I took a deep breath and set the ribs down. I'm telling you one final time. I am not your husband. I'm Leo Lin. You personally laid me off. Remember. Her chopsticks paused midair. The sauce dripped from the rib, landing on the table in a small dark spot. I remember. She said. And you don't see anything wrong with showing up at my house every night. She looked up. A bit of sauce glistened on her lower lip in the warm yellow light. The problem is you. She said. You forgot to add a spoonful of sugar. I leaned back. This woman. Was she seriously losing her mind? She finished the last rib. Stood up. And carried her bowl to the sink. The movement was practiced. Like she'd done it 100 times. She set the bowl down in exactly the same spot as always. Then she grabbed her bag. Walked to the door. And slipped on her shoes. As she bent over, the back of her neck was exposed. Pale skin. with a tiny mole. "Tomorrow I want sweet and sour pork," she said. "In your dreams." She pulled the door open. The hallway draft rushed in, lifting the loose strands of hair around her ears. She turned back and looked at me. But this time, something was different. Usually her eyes were cold. Today, there was something else mixed in. I couldn't quite name it. "Leo," she said. "You'll make it for me." The door clicked shut. Her heels echoed down the hallway. Click, 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 fading into the distance. I stood alone at the table, staring at the half-empty plate of ribs. A film of white fat had already congealed on the surface. I suddenly felt hollow. What was I even doing? Why didn't I ever actually kick her out? Why did I always say no dinner for you and still let her sit down? Why did I only buy ingredients for one person, yet always cook for two? I walked over to the sofa and sat down. My gaze landed on the coffee table. The little brown notebook was sitting there. She'd left it behind, right in the center of the table, like it had been placed there deliberately. I stared at it for half a minute. Brown leather, glowing softly under the light. The corners were worn and slightly curled. Page 1. What was on page 1? I reached out, then pulled my hand back. "No, Leo. If you look, you lose. She left this here on purpose. She wants you to look. This is Rebecca we're talking about. She does everything with purpose. 3 years ago, when she laid me off, she used exactly 16 words. Every one of them precise. Not a single extra syllable. Leaving this notebook here was the same play. I picked it up and shoved it in the coffee table drawer. No. Not looking. Absolutely not. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the same images over and over, the way she'd pushed through the door. The faint, barely there curve of her mouth when she said the ribs are too salty. The way the draft had lifted her hair as she left. I rolled over and pulled the covers over my head. 3 years ago came flooding back. Back then, she wasn't like this. Back then, she wore white suits on stage. Her hair slicked back flawlessly. Red lips. Stilettos. Her voice wasn't loud, but you could hear a pin drop among 300 people in that conference room. When she read the layoff list, she paused at my name. Half a second. But I remember it clearly. Then she said, "Leo Lin. Technology Department. Report to HR tomorrow." What did I feel at that moment? Hard to say. Anger. A little. Mostly just numbness. I'd worked at that company for 2 years. Writing code day and night. Thinking I was building something incredible. Then the product tanked. The company collapsed. And I was sent packing along with 300 others. My severance covered 3 months of rent. And then it was gone. The night I slept on a park bench. The wind was brutal. Someone covered me with a jacket that night. When I woke up, there was a black suit jacket draped over me. I figured it was just something someone had abandoned. The next day, I donated it to a clothing donation bin on the street corner. Now she said it was hers. If it really was hers. Had she sat at the other end of that bench and watched me all night? Why? To mock me. Or had she had nowhere else to go? Neither. She'd founded the company herself. After it collapsed, her husband left her. She'd been pulled off a rooftop twice. I heard about it later. From other people. By then, I was out of that circle. Scrambling for jobs. working night shifts at a convenience store, writing freelance code at internet cafes. I didn't have the energy to care about her. But now she showed up at my house every single night. The next morning at 7 o'clock, I went out to buy steamed buns and ran into her in the stairwell. She was wearing gray cotton pajamas, the cuffs slightly frayed. Her hair was haphazardly twisted into a bun, loose strands falling around her ears. She was carrying a trash bag. She looked nothing like the cold-faced executive I'd see downstairs during the day. During the day, she wore pencil skirts, lipstick, heels no higher than 2 inches. She'd once said any taller looked too aggressive, bad for negotiations. But those were just fleeting glimpses in the elevator. "Morning," she said, yawning. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Morning." I stepped aside to let her pass. She reached the stairwell landing and suddenly stopped. The motion sensor light clicked off in the silence. She stood in the dark for 2 seconds. Then the light flicked back on. "Oh," she said without turning around. "Don't make sweet and sour pork tonight." I blinked. "You finally came to your senses. Make boiled beef and chili oil instead." Her voice was husky with sleep. "My throat hurts. I can't do sweet stuff." She left. Her slippers slapped against the stairs. A soft thwop. 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 I stood in the stairwell, holding my bag of buns. The steam from the plastic bag warmed my hand. I didn't move for a long time. Her throat hurt. She'd worn so little yesterday. That gray dress had a deep neckline, and the scar underneath her collarbone. I suddenly remembered that scar. Long, pinkish, running across her skin like a thin thread. I hadn't seen it clearly in last night's light, but I remembered the placement, 2 inches below the collarbone. Dead center. That night on the rooftop. It was me who pulled her down. I'd never told anyone, because after that, she'd vanished. The company folded. She left. And I never looked for her. I thought she didn't know it was me. That night, I'd been drunk. I was passing by that building, the old company headquarters, and saw someone standing on the roof. I yelled. The person turned and looked at me. Then I ran up and pulled her down. Her arm was so thin. My hand closed around it easily. Later, she sat on the ground, and I left. I was too drunk to remember whether she'd cried or what she'd said. I only remembered the wind, and how cold her hands were. I thought she didn't know. She'd known all along. At 6:35 that evening, the door was knocked on right on time. I set the boiled beef on the table, red oil floating on the surface, Sichuan peppercorns and dried chilies crackling with fragrance. The beef sliced evenly. She pushed the door open and swapped her shoes for slippers. Wait. Since when did she have slippers at my place? Pink fuzzy ones, with little bunny ears on the toes. They looked completely out of place on her. She sat down, lowered her head, and ate. Quietly today. Bite after bite. Her cheeks bulging. Rebecca. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe, arms crossed. Take your slippers back. I don't keep women's shoes here. She didn't look up. They're your ex-girlfriend's. I don't have an ex-girlfriend. Then no need to throw them out. She picked up a slice of beef, blew on it, and put it in her mouth. No one's wearing them anyway. I opened my mouth to argue, then realized she was right. Those slippers had been sitting at the bottom of the shoe cabinet for who knows how long. Maybe the previous tenant left them. Or maybe my mom bought them on a visit. but the size was too small for my mom. I shut my mouth. She ate slower than usual today. A bowl of rice took nearly half an hour. She left most of the beef. Toward the end, her chopsticks slowed down. She leaned back in her chair, staring blankly, chopsticks in hand. A ring of red oil had congealed around the rim of her bowl. Done? I asked. She shook her head. Set the chopsticks down with a soft click. Rebecca. I walked over and sat down, the chair legs scraping against the floor. I leaned forward. What's really going on with you? She didn't answer. Her fingers traced the edge of the table. Her nails were clipped short and clean. Your company's been liquidated. Right. Debt's mostly cleared. You've got a job now. The pay's not great, but enough to get by. So why do you have to come here every single day? She kept her head down. Her lashes cast shadows under her eyes. The light from above made her silhouette look thin and fragile. Leo. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean in. Do you know what it's like to eat alone? I blinked. It's just eating. What's there to feel? She looked up. Under the light, I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the pallor of her lips. She looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. But her eyes were bright. Too bright to meet directly. I tried, she said. I tried cooking for myself. But I'd start crying halfway through. Not the onion cutting kind. I'd be stir-frying and suddenly tears would come. And the range hood was too loud for the neighbors to hear. I tried going to restaurants. But everyone at the other tables was laughing. And I was sitting alone. The waiter asked if I wanted to move to a window seat. I said no. I tried takeout. But by the time I opened the packaging, I'd lost my appetite. The plastic bag would leak sauce all over the table. She looked at me. Steady. Unflinching. Only at your place can I finish a bowl of rice. Something pricked at the soft spot in my chest. An ache that spread from my ribs up to my throat. But I hardened myself a second later. No. I couldn't go soft. This woman knew exactly how to work people. 3 years ago, when she'd said, Leo, you're very talented, but the company no longer needs you. I wish you the best. She'd used that same sincere, unarguable tone. Rebecca, don't pull this on me. I stood up, the chair scraping again. Playing the victim doesn't work. You didn't feel sorry for me when you laid me off. My severance covered 3 months of rent. And then I was out. I slept on a park bench. You know that. Her lips moved. Her upper lip was thin. Her lower lip slightly fuller. When she pressed them together, there was a tiny curve. I know, she said. You know. You don't know any. I sat at the other end of that bench all night. She looked up at me, her voice steady. When you fell asleep, I put my jacket over you. The air froze. The kitchen range hood was still humming. The fridge compressor kicked in with a click. Outside, a car drove past, tires hissing over wet asphalt. I stared at her. The bench. The jacket. That night, someone had covered me with something. When I woke up, there was a black suit jacket over me. Soft fabric. A faint scent of perfume. I'd thought it was abandoned. I even thought, this is expensive. The next day, I folded it and left it on the bench, in case the owner came back. But when I returned later, the jacket was gone. That was yours. She didn't answer. She finished the last grains of rice. Not a single one left. Then took her bowl to the sink. Rinsed it under the tap. Tomorrow I want stir-fried shrimp, she said. I'm going. She walked to the door and changed her shoes. The bunny ears rubbed against the floor. She stepped on the heel of her left foot with her right, kicking the slippers off. As she bent over, the collar of her pajama top drooped a little. I stood at the kitchen doorway and saw the scar under her collarbone. Long, pinkish, running across her skin like a thin thread. Left to right. About 3 inches. The scar looked recent. The skin around it was still faintly pink. She pulled the door open and left. The hallway draft rushed in, carrying the humid heat of a June evening. I stood alone in the kitchen. The bowl she'd used sat in the sink. White ceramic with a small blue flower on the bottom. The faucet wasn't fully closed, drips fell one after another, splashing against the rim. The little notebook was still in the coffee table drawer. I walked over and pulled the drawer open. The brown leather cover lay quietly inside, like a sleeping cat. There were also a few pins, a stack of takeout menus, and half a pack of cigarettes. I reached out and picked it up. The leather was cool to the touch, carrying an old smell of paper and ink. I opened it. Page 1 had only one line. Her handwriting. Thin. Sharp. Each stroke pressed so hard the back of the page was embossed. Like Braille. The ink was blue-black, slightly smudged, as if her hand had been shaking when she wrote it. I read it 3 times. My hands started to shake. It said, Leo, I'm going to cling to you for the rest of my life. Suddenly, a key scraped into the lock at the door. Metal against metal. Click. I slammed the notebook shut, shoved it back in the drawer, and banged my knee against the corner of the coffee table. The pain shot through me. The door opened. She leaned halfway in, her hair messy, her expression calm. The hallway light behind her outlined her silhouette in a soft fringe. Forgot to tell you, she said. I made a copy of your key. She held it up and jingled it. Brass, with a tiny rabbit keychain, matching the slippers. You looked at the notebook just now, didn't you? Her tone was a statement, not a question. No. You did. No. She smiled. Barely. Just the corners of her mouth curving up. But in all the time I'd known her, I'd never seen her smile like that. At the office, she'd smile at clients and investors, the angle of her mouth precise as if measured. This time, her eyes curved along with it. Looked or not, she said. You can't get away anyway. The door closed. Her footsteps padded down the hallway, fading away. I stood in the middle of the living room, palms sweaty. My heart pounded against my ribs. She was right. I couldn't get away. Because there was another line, smaller, at the bottom of the second page. I'd seen it when I flipped to page 2. It said, that night on the rooftop, you were the one who pulled me down. Don't forget. I hadn't forgotten. I'd thought I had. But in that moment, it all came back. 3 years ago. Early morning. Late November. The wind was strong enough to knock you over. I was drunk, walking out of a convenience store with a half-empty can of beer, passing by that office building. Someone was standing on the roof. The wind whipped her hair into chaos, her skirt billowing like a flag. I shouted. My voice didn't sound like my own. The person turned and looked at me. From a dozen floors away. I couldn't see her face. but I remembered the silhouette. Then I ran, climbed a dozen flights of stairs, pushed open the rooftop door, and grabbed her arm. It was Rebecca. Her arm was so thin my hand closed around it completely. Her wrist was cold, her whole body trembling in the wind. I pulled her down. She sat on the ground, curled up, face buried in her knees. I didn't know what to say. I was too drunk. My tongue was tied. Then I left. I tripped on the stairs on the way down, scraping my knee. The next morning, there was a dark red stain on my pants. I never told anyone, because after that, she disappeared. The company folded. She left, and I never looked for her. Later, I heard she'd been pulled off a rooftop twice. Once by a company employee, once by a stranger. I thought I was the stranger. I was the employee. She'd been writing this down for 3 years. I slowly crouched down, gripping the edge of the coffee table. My heart was thundering. My head buzzed, those words bouncing around in my skull. Her writing was so forceful, every stroke carved in. Outside, her slippers thumped down the hallway, growing distant, until they were swallowed by the ding of the elevator. I almost wanted to call her back, but I didn't. I crouched there for nearly 10 minutes until my legs went numb. When I stood up, my knees cracked. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The streetlight cast a dim yellow glow below. She was just walking out of the building entrance, looking down at her phone. The screen lit up her face, softening the lines of her profile. She walked a few steps, stopped under the street lamp, and looked up toward my window. Too far to read her expression, but I could feel her smiling. That faint curve of her lips. She turned and walked away. Her shadow stretched long across the asphalt, like a black river. I leaned against the window frame, forehead pressed to the cool glass. I was done for. She'd said it. On the third day, I didn't go grocery shopping. I turned off my phone, drew the curtains, and spent the whole day on the sofa watching TV. Nothing registered. Figures moved across the screen, voices droning like I was underwater. Those lines kept bouncing in my head. Leo, I'm going to cling to you for the rest of my life. That night on the rooftop, you were the one who pulled me down. You're done for. By 2 p.m., I was starving. I went to the kitchen and made instant noodles. As I tore open the seasoning packet, my hand slipped. Half of it spilled on the counter. I wiped it up with a cloth. As I wiped, I noticed a sticky note on the fridge, reading shrimp, green peppers, eggs, fish. My handwriting, messy. A grocery list from the night before. I stared at it for a long time. The shrimp was for her. She'd said she wanted stir-fried shrimp. I tore the note off, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash. At 5 p.m., I heard a sound at the door. Not knocking. A key in the lock. Metal turning in the cylinder. Click. The door opened. She stood there in a gray dress, holding 2 plastic supermarket bags. Through the transparent plastic, I could see green peppers, red tomatoes, white tofu. She stepped inside and switched to her slippers. The fuzzy bunny ears scraped across the floor. You didn't buy groceries, she said. Not a question. I did. She walked in, carried the bags to the kitchen, set them on the counter, and started taking things out one by one. Shrimp, green peppers, eggs, A sea base. Scallions. 2 boxes of tofu. A bag of tomatoes. The shrimp's frozen. But the store said they just got it in today. I had the fish guy clean it for me. Rebecca. I sat up on the sofa. The TV was still on. Playing some old movie. Dialogue drifting in and out. Give me back my key. She ignored me. She took out the shrimp. Turned it over to check the date. Then put it in the freezer. She glanced back at me. You know how to cook fish. Right. Give me back my key. I remember you cooked fish once at the company team building event. She crouched down to rummage through the lower part of the fridge, pulling out a half-empty bottle of soy sauce to check the date. It was really good. Mr. Chin had 2 bowls of rice that day. Rebecca. I finally stood up and walked over. She was crouched in front of the open fridge, looking up at me. Her eyes were expressionless, but the corners of her mouth curved slightly. The cold air from the fridge hit her face, turning the tip of her nose pink. What? She said. You. I pointed at her. Then at the door. This isn't appropriate. What's inappropriate? You're not my girlfriend. You're not my wife. You come here every day. You have a key to my place. Then make me your wife. The air exploded. She was still crouching there, looking up at me. Her expression as calm as if she'd just said, "The shrimp isn't very fresh today." My mouth hung open. Not a word came out. The fridge hummed. Cold air spilled out, washing over my legs. She stood up, holding a carton of eggs. A dozen eggs sat perfectly inside the clear plastic container. Well, she said, you're insane. Rebecca. When you pulled me off that rooftop, you should have known what you were signing up for. She placed the eggs neatly into the fridge shelf. You pulled me down. You're responsible. I was drunk that night. You were drunk and you still saved someone. There's no way you'd walk away sober. She closed the fridge door, dusted off her hands, and turned to walk right up to me. A magnet on the fridge door fell off. Plop. Onto the floor. She didn't bend down to pick it up. She was half a head shorter than me, but her presence didn't waver. She stood so close I could smell the laundry detergent on her clothes. A faint floral scent. Leo. She said. Not loud, but every word crystal clear. I've been observing you for 3 months. Observing what? Observing whether you have a girlfriend. Whether you avoid me like everyone else. What time you leave and come home. What songs you hum when you cook. She stepped forward, her toes touching mine. Conclusion, you don't have a girlfriend. You're regular as clockwork. You hum J-Cho when you cook. You tell me to leave, but you always make enough for 2. You've made every dish written in that little notebook. I stepped back, the edge of the counter digging into my lower back. Cold marble. I haven't. Yes. You have. Her eyes glowed like lit lamps. You made sweet and sour pork. You made boiled beef. You're making stir-fried shrimp tonight. You always say there's no dinner for me, but the dishes always come out in portions for 2. You cut 2 scallions. You steamed 2 bowls of rice. You picked the biggest plate. She reached out and poked my chest with one finger. Her fingertip was cool, pressing right over my heart through the t-shirt. Leo. I'm in your heart. I stumbled back, hitting the counter again, and winced. I opened my mouth to argue, to say you're delusional, to say I just haven't changed my habits, to say don't flatter yourself. But those lines in the notebook were fighting in my head. Her handwriting. Stroke after stroke. Pressed so deep the paper was embossed. I couldn't form a single sentence. I'll start cooking. She turned and walked into the kitchen, pulling open cabinets to find an apron. She reached up, couldn't quite grab it, and went on tiptoe. The hem of her dress rode up, revealing the thin tendons behind her knees. You don't know how to cook? Then teach me. I stood in the living room, watching her rummage through my kitchen. She found the apron. The blue one, hanging on the hook behind the door. She put it on, tying the strings behind her back in a lopsided bow. She picked up the chef's knife. The handle was too thick for her small hand. Leo, do I need to marinate the shrimp? Yes. How? Shaoxing wine, salt, white pepper, egg white, cornstarch. I walked over, stood beside her, and took the shrimp out of the fridge. Move over. I'll do it. No. She blocked the counter with her body. You teach me. I'll do it. Will it even be edible? It will be if you teach me. She looked at me, serious. The apron strings hung loose at her back. Two dangling straps. A strand of hair had fallen across her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear. I sighed. 1 teaspoon of wine. Half a teaspoon of salt. A pinch of white pepper. Egg white. Crack the egg first. Separate the white from the yolk. She cracked the egg clumsily, shell fragments falling into the bowl. She reached in to fish them out, her fingers sticky with egg white. Can you do this? Yes. She fished around for ages, finally giving up, and I reached in to pick out the shells. Her head was down, her ear tips red. Leo. Yeah. I'd never cooked for anyone before. Clearly. My ex-husband used to do all the cooking. Her voice dropped, her stirring slowed. He was a great cook. Much better than me. I didn't respond. She paused for 2 seconds, then stirred harder, splashing a few drops on the counter. After he stopped, I never had home-cooked food again. 3 years. She set the bowl down and turned to look at me. A thin layer of moisture glimmered in her eyes. You were the first. Only the low hum of the rain had broke the silence. Outside, the sky had darkened. Lights in the opposite building were flicking on one by one. I stood beside her. On the counter sat the shrimp, the green peppers, the sliced ginger. Her profile was soft in the light. A thin line of sweat traced her nose. All right, I said. Now that the shrimp's marinating, cut the peppers. What shape? Roll cut. What's roll cut? I sighed again. I reached over and took her hand, the one holding the knife, and guided her wrist. Like this. Rotate as you cut. Her hand was cold, her fingers thin. When I held it, she stiffened for a second, then slowly relaxed. Got it. You got nothing. I'll cut another one. Watch. She cut another pepper. Roll cut became roll slices. Uneven, varying in size. I watched for a long time. Rebecca. Yeah. How did you ever build a company? She laughed. Actually laughed. A light sound, like a small bell. Because of my ex-husband. He handled operations, I handled strategy. After he left, I couldn't do anything. She swept the pepper pieces into a plate and turned to deal with the fish. It was already clean but still had scales. She scraped with the back of the knife twice, and the fish slid off the board. Flop! Into the sink. She stood there, staring at the fish in the sink. Leo. Yeah. I feel like I can't do anything right. Her voice was so soft. It sounded like she was talking to herself. But every word hit my chest. Pick up the fish first, I said. She bent down, picked it up. Her fingers touched the cold skin and flinched. When you laid me off, you didn't sound like this, I said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. You said, Leo, you're very talented, but the company no longer needs you. I wish you the best. 16 words. Every one of them precise. Her hand froze around the fish. I was. You were telling the truth, I said. You never waste words. You do things for a reason. You laid people off cleanly because the company was really drowning. You were trying to save whoever was left. I figured that out later. She turned her head, her eyes wavering. Did you hate me? At one point. And now? Now. I looked at the fish in the sink, its gills were still faintly moving. Now you show up at my house every day to eat. Does it even matter whether I hate you? She placed the fish on the cutting board and bowed her head. She stood there a long time. Then she picked up the knife and chopped off the fish's head. One clean stroke. Leo. Yeah. The first dish you teach me. I'm writing it down. Writing what down? Stir-fried shrimp. Steps. Heat. The tone of your voice. She didn't turn around. I'm writing it all down. That night, she cooked. The stir-fried shrimp was overdone, rubbery and tough. The braised fish had its skin broken. The fillet split in two. The eggs were scrambled into a messy pulp. The peppers still raw. But she ate 2 bowls of rice and said it was delicious. I sat across from her, watching. Something felt off. 3 years ago, when she'd stood on that stage, 300 people had fallen silent. White suit, hair swept back, red lipstick. One sentence from her could keep people working till 3 a.m. She never drank water during meetings, even when her voice went dry. She walked fast. Her heels clack 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 across the marble floor. When she was angry, she wouldn't say a word. She'd just look at you. 10 seconds. And you'd apologize automatically. Now she was wearing my old t-shirt. Gray cotton. Sleeves too long. Rolled up twice. Her hair was in a messy bun. Stray strands everywhere. She was crouched on the floor, wiping up oil spots in my kitchen with a rag. Clumsy. Rebecca. Yeah. She looked up. There was a gray smudge on her forehead. Why me? She stopped wiping and slowly stood up. Her knees cracked. Because you never asked why I was on that rooftop. Everyone else asked. Reporters. Cops. Even my ex-husband. He said, "What could you possibly be thinking?" She laughed. The corners of her mouth went up, then quickly down. Only you didn't ask. I was too drunk to ask. You never asked later. Either. I didn't answer. She came over and stood in front of me, close enough that I could see my reflection in her pupils. Her eyes were dark brown. Bright. Leo, she said, very softly. Not asking is the kindest thing anyone's ever done. Then she leaned in and kissed my forehead, light as a falling leaf. Her lips were warm, with a faint taste of braised fish oil. She stepped back, picked up her bag. Going now? Tomorrow I want tomato beef brisket. The door closed. Footsteps padded down the hallway. I sat alone at the table. The spot on my forehead was warm. It stayed warm for a long time. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. A text from an unknown number. Local area code. Hello, Mr. Lin. I'm the attorney for Rebecca's ex-husband, Ethan Chin. Regarding a document Miss Bennett signed 3 years ago. There are some matters we'd like to discuss with you. Would you be available for a call? I stared at the screen for a long time. The light stung my eyes. 3 years. Documents. Ex-husband. Rebecca had never mentioned her ex to me. She only said he'd run off. And then what? Were they divorced? How were assets split? How were debts divided? When her company collapsed, did her ex-husband contribute a single cent? They'd started the business together. Her strategy. Him operations. At its peak, the company was valued at over $100 million. He posted pictures of cars and watches on his socials every day. Then it collapsed. And he vanished. Completely. Not a trace. Rebecca handled the mess alone. Vendors. Employees. Banks. She was pulled off a rooftop twice. The notebook said cling to you for life. But life wasn't something you could solve with a few written lines. I turned my phone face down on the table. From the kitchen, the smell of braised fish lingered, mixed with the shrimp's briny odor. The range had hummed. I stood up to turn it off. Passing the coffee table, I glanced at the drawer. The notebook was still inside. But suddenly, I didn't want to open it anymore. Because I knew if I kept reading, what I'd find might not be sweetness. It might be a knife. 7 million. Those 3 words came out of her mouth. And I nearly dropped the glass in my hand. It was the 4th evening. She'd come again. 6:35. When I opened the door, she was already standing there, holding a bag of tomatoes and beef brisket. Tomato beef brisket tonight, she said. I didn't speak. I stepped aside to let her in. She changed into her slippers, carried the bag to the kitchen, and arranged the tomatoes on the counter. Red. Round. 7 of them. She counted once. Then again. Rebecca. Yeah. That attorney texted me. Her hand stopped on the 3rd tomato. Her fingertip pressed lightly into the skin, leaving a small dent. What did he say? Something about your ex-husband's documents. Debt-related. She didn't answer. She picked up the dented tomato, inspected it, and rinsed it under the tap. Rebecca. 7 million. She said. The faucet ran, her voice was very low. Still 7 million left. The company's liquidated. Everything saleable was sold. Most of it's paid off. The remaining 7 million is a joint liability guarantee my ex-husband signed. He ran. The bank came after me. I can't pay it. My current salary doesn't even cover the interest. She placed the tomato on the cutting board and sliced it. 1 cut. 2 halves. Red juice spilled out, staining the blade. So you come to my house every day to eat? I said. Save on food. Her knife hand paused. Leo. Don't talk like that. Then how should I talk? You owe 7 million. Your ex-husband ran off. You come to my house every day to eat. You even made a copy of my key. I make $8,000 a month. My mortgage is $6,000. What do you want me to say? She set down the knife and turned around. Tomato juice on her hands. Red. I'm not asking you to pay it. Then why do you come here? I told you. I can't eat alone. Rebecca. What am I to you? A dinner machine. A band-aid for your wounds. She looked at me. Her eyes reddened slowly. But she didn't cry. She never cried in front of me. Sometimes I'd see her eyes turn red. And she'd look down or turn away. By the time she looked back, the redness would be gone. You're the one who pulled me down, she said. I was drunk. You still pulled me down. So you're going to cling to me for life because a drunk person grabbed you. Rebecca. Does that seem reasonable? Does that seem fair to you? She was silent. Tomato juice dripped from her fingertips, falling to the floor in tiny red dots. Not fair, she said, very softly. Then you should. But Leo. She looked up, eyes bright. You already pulled. You pulled. And now you can't shake me off. I'm clinging to you. Call me selfish. Call me unreasonable. I don't care. I'm clinging. She turned back to the cutting board and continued slicing tomatoes. Slowly. Carefully. I'll pay the $7 million myself. I'll handle the interest myself. I'll dodge the bank collectors. I'll accept the court summons. But I'm having dinner at your place. You can kick me out. And I still won't leave. Call the cops if you dare. She didn't turn around. Her back looked thin. Her shoulders slightly raised. The knife made steady sounds against the board. Thunk! 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 I stood at the kitchen doorway. Something was lodged in my throat. I wanted to speak. But what came out would be ugly. I held it in. That night, she made the tomato beef brisket. It simmered for over an hour, the tomatoes dissolved into the broth. The beef tender. She tasted the soup and added another spoonful of salt. Too salty, she said. Yeah. Still edible. She filled 2 bowls of rice and pushed the bigger one toward me. Leo. Yeah. If you want to leave. Now's your chance. She handed me chopsticks. Wooden. The tips slightly frayed. I'll return the key tomorrow. I'll take the notebook. I won't come anymore. She said it while looking at the beef brisket in her bowl. Not at me. I took the chopsticks. Heat, I said. She looked up at me. Her eyes reddened again. This time she couldn't hold it in. A tear fell, landing in her bowl. The surface of the soup rippled briefly. She wiped it away quickly. Leo. Yeah. You're an idiot. I know. She lowered her head and ate. Her shoulders trembled. I picked up a piece of brisket and put it in her bowl. I slept on a park bench. I said. I owed 3 months' rent. I ate expired bread and got diarrhea. 7 million's a lot. But you still have to eat. She didn't look up. But her chopsticks reached over and placed a piece of brisket back into my bowl. That night, when she left, she didn't return the key. She didn't take the notebook either. She stood at the door, putting on her shoes. The fuzzy bunny slippers scraped on the floor. Tomorrow I want dumplings, she said. Pork and cabbage. How did you know? You wrote it in the margin of page 3. She froze for a second. Then her ears went red. Bright red. Even her earlobes turning pink. So you did look, she said. You already knew. She finished with her shoes, stood up, and pulled the door open. The hallway draft rushed in. Looked or not, she said. You can't get away anyway. The door closed. I stood in the living room. The coffee table drawer was cracked open, the brown notebook peeking out. I walked over and took it out, flipping to page 3. Beside the arrow, there was indeed a small line of writing, pork and cabbage dumplings. If he guesses right, I'll marry him. I stared at those words for a long time. Marry. She'd written it so small, squeezed between the arrow and the margin, like she was afraid someone would see it. But she wrote it anyway. I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer. Outside, the moon had risen, white and round, lighting up the roof across the street. The street lamp below was empty. She hadn't lingered under it tonight. Probably in a hurry. She didn't come the next day. 6:35. 6:45. 7 o'clock. The door never opened. No key in the lock. I made a whole table of food. Tomato beef brisket, stir-fried vegetables, cold cucumber salad. The dumplings were in the fridge. Pork and cabbage, filling I'd spent 3 hours perfecting. 2 sets of chopsticks on the table. At 7:30, I texted her. No reply. I called. Off. I sat at the table. The food went cold. I didn't eat a single bite. I'd made 40 dumplings, neatly arranged on a plate, dusted with flour. She'd said she liked cabbage and pork. Extra ginger. Less salt. At 8 o'clock sharp, I put on my jacket and went out. I went to her door and knocked. Knock. 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 Silence. I knocked harder, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. A neighbor cracked the door, glanced out, and shut it again. No answer. I went downstairs to find the security guard. Old Jean, in his 50s, had worked the building for nearly 8 years. Miss Bennett. He leaned out of the booth. She left this afternoon. Had a suitcase with her. I asked if she was traveling. She said yeah. Looked kind of pale. My brain buzzed. Suitcase. Yeah. She asked me to hold a package for her. Oh. And she told me to give you something. Old Jean bent down and pulled a manila envelope out of the booth drawer. Unsealed. I opened it. Inside was the key. Brass. With the rabbit keychain. And a sticky note. Her handwriting. Thin and sharp. Keep the dumplings. I'll be back. I stood in front of the booth, gripping the note. The June night wind was thick and humid, clinging to my face. Cars streamed past on the opposite road, taillights leaving red trails. Did she say where she was going? No. Just took a cab. Old Jean studied me. You two have a fight. I didn't answer. I stood under the street lamp, crumpling the note in my hand, then smoothing it out again. Keep the dumplings. I'll be back. She said back. But I didn't know when. I dialed the number from the text message. It rang 7 or 8 times. Then picked up. Hello. This is Leo Lin. You texted me earlier today. A 2-second pause. A man's voice. Standard Mandarin. Professionally pleasant. Mr. Lin. Hello. I'm Attorney Wong, representing Mr. Ethan Chen. There's a property settlement agreement Mr. Chen and Ms. Bennett signed 3 years ago involving certain debt responsibilities. We've recently noticed a clause that may need to be reviewed. We'd like to meet with you in person. What does it have to do with me? Because according to a supplementary clause, if Miss Bennett remarries within 3 years, the new spouse becomes jointly responsible for the original debt. Mr. Chen recently received information suggesting Miss Bennett may have a new partner. She doesn't. I stopped. The notebook. The notebook that said cling to you for life. The notebook that said if he guesses right, I'll marry him. Mr. Lin. I hung up. I stood in the stairwell. One of the lights was flickering, on and off, casting my shadow long then short. The note in my hand was crumpled. She'd left with her suitcase. Did she know about that clause? Did she think I was going to push her away? Did she think I'd read that text and turn my back? Before she left, she'd left me her key. She'd left keep the dumplings. I ran back upstairs, pulled open the coffee table drawer. The notebook was still there. Brown leather, lying quietly. I opened it. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5 was blank. Last time, I'd assumed that was the end. I flipped further. Page 6 had a line. Today's date, if I don't come tomorrow. Don't come looking for me. My hands were shaking as I held the notebook. There was another line below. Even smaller. She must have pressed the pen as fine as possible to write it. I'll pay my own debts. I closed the notebook. I took a deep breath. The air in my chest was hot. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and dialed her number. Off. Dialed again. Off. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the cold tomato beef brisket on the table. The oil had congealed into a white film. The tomatoes had settled at the bottom. In the freezer, 40 dumplings waited. No. I wasn't letting her go. 3 years ago, I'd pulled her off a rooftop. And that was when I was drunk. This time, I hadn't touched a drop. I was completely sober. I opened my contacts and called the property manager. It rang half a time before picking up. Can you check which station the cab Rebecca took this afternoon went to? Quickly. 10 minutes later, I rode my bike to the high-speed rail station. I locked it to a post and ran into the main hall. Crowded. Suitcase wheels and broadcast announcements everywhere. I held up her photo on my phone and asked around. No one had seen her. I'd taken the photo that day when she was crouched in front of the fridge. Her face was a little blurry, but I'd recognize that silhouette anywhere. The PA announced that the train to South City was about to board. South City. Her hometown. She'd mentioned it once. Her mother still lived there. I ran toward that gate, pushed through the crowd, bumping into people, not stopping to apologize. At the end of the line, a woman in a gray dress stood by the ticket gate, dragging a suitcase, hair in a bun, back straight. The gray dress. The same one she'd been wearing when she showed up at my door with the grocery bags. Rebecca. She didn't turn around. The ticket machine beeped. She took a step forward. I pushed through the line and grabbed her wrist. Her hand was cold. The same as that night on the rooftop 3 years ago. She turned. Her eyes were red. But she hadn't cried. She just looked at me. Her expression as still as dead water. What are you doing here? She said. Finish the notebook. What about page 7? I didn't let go of her wrist. My fingers dug in, pressing against bone. You wrote 5 pages and stopped. You're going to cling to me halfway and then quit. Since when do you do things halfway? Her lips moved. Pale. Chapped. Leo. The debt. None of my business. I said. I don't care. Then why are you? I'm here to take you home for dinner. The beef brisket's cold. The dumplings are in the freezer. She stared. People behind us grumbled. The ticket checker glanced over. Are you going or not? My voice came out rough. If you leave, I'm burning that notebook tonight. We're strangers from then on. Whatever debt you owe has nothing to do with me. She was silent. People flowed around us. Someone bumping her shoulder. If you don't go. I took a breath. If you don't go. You come home with me. I'll heat up the brisket. Tomorrow you pick whatever you want. Keep writing in that notebook until it's full. Finally, a tear spilled from the corner of her eye. It hung on her lash. Glistening. She wiped it away. Leo. Her voice was hoarse. Do you know how much that debt is? No. And I don't want to. 7 million. Okay. Okay. What does okay mean? Okay means okay. I said. 7 million is 7 million. I'm not paying it for you. You'll earn it yourself. But the food's on me. She looked at me for a long time. The ticket gate was empty. The checker was packing up. The PA announced the next train. She let go of her suitcase handle and stepped forward. Her toes touched mine. You said it. She said. I said it. Keep writing. Keep writing. What's page 7? You figure it out at home. She slapped my shoulder lightly. Not hard. Her palm was warm. Then she bent down, grabbed her suitcase, and turned to walk back toward the main hall. I followed. She walked fast, the gray dress weaving through the crowd. I caught up and walked beside her. Our footsteps overlapped. The suitcase wheels rumbled against the floor. Leo. Yeah. Can you actually cook tomato beef brisket? I'm learning. She reached over and pinched my lower back lightly through my t-shirt. Then learn faster. She said. It was nearly 10 p.m. when we got back to my place. I reheated the cold beef brisket. Oil sizzled as the meat hit the pan, aroma filled the kitchen. She sat at the table, flipping through the little notebook. Slowly, page by page. When she reached the line on page 5, she paused, her fingers tracing the paper. You saw this page? She said. Not a question. Yeah. What did you think? I thought. I set down the spatula and turned to look at her. The brisket bubbled in the pot behind me. I thought if you tried to run, I'd come after you. Her lips curved. That smile was more real than any before. Tiny laugh lines appeared at the corners of her eyes. Leo. Yeah. I've written page 7. She held up the notebook, cover facing me. I walked over and took it. Opened to page 7. One line. In blue-black ink. Her handwriting neater than the earlier pages. Tomorrow I'm moving in. I looked at her. Is that okay? She said. In the kitchen. The beef brisket bubbled and steamed, the lid trembling. The sauce was almost reduced, fragrance drifted from the kitchen to the living room. She sat at the table looking up at me, the light gilding her hair in warm gold. Yeah. I said. She closed the notebook, hugged it to her chest, and pulled the key out of her bag. The one old Zhang had given me, and I'd put in her bag, and jingled it. The rabbit charm clinked. Then this is official. Official what? My official proof that I'm clinging to you. I took the key, looked at it, and placed it back in her palm. Her fingers slowly curled around it. Keep it safe, I said. Don't lose it. She looked down at the key in her palm, its teeth pressing into her skin. She suddenly sniffled. Very small. But the kitchen was too quiet for me not to hear. Leo. What now? I'm not crying. I know. I'm just. She gripped the key tighter, her knuckles white. I just think laying you off 3 years ago might have been the best thing I ever did. Laying me off was good. If I hadn't, you wouldn't have gone drinking. If you hadn't gone drinking, you wouldn't have passed that building. If you hadn't passed that building. She paused, her voice catching. You might not be here right now. I stood there, holding the bowl of heated beef brisket. The bottom was hot even through the towel. Steam hit my face. It was warm. Heat. I set the bowl in front of her and placed her chopsticks. Then wash the dishes. You wash them. Why me? Because you came after me. If you came after me, you have to see it through. She snapped her chopsticks apart, picked up a piece of brisket, blew on it, and put it in her mouth. Her cheeks puffed as she chewed, and her eyes lit up. Delicious, she said. I sat down and picked up my own chopsticks. Wooden ones. Different from my others. She bought them that day she showed up with grocery bags, saying your chopsticks are too old. Time for new ones. And put them in my cabinet. Outside, the moon rose. The opposite building glowed with scattered lights. The street lamp below was empty. Still. She sat across from me, head down, eating. Her hair had come loose, strands falling across her cheek. She tucked them behind her ear, her fingertips smudged with tomato sauce. Suddenly I realized, what was written in that notebook didn't actually matter. What mattered was what she was thinking when she wrote it. What mattered was that she had started writing 3 years ago on that rooftop. Stroke after stroke, pressing so hard the paper was embossed. Her hand shook when she wrote "Cling to you for life." The ink smeared. She pressed so fine when she wrote "If I don't come tomorrow, don't look for me." Almost tearing the page. Leo. Yeah. Dumplings tomorrow. What filling? Guess. She smiled. Her eyes curved. Not like a CEO. Not like a debtor. Just a woman sitting across from me who wanted to cling to me for life. I picked up a piece of brisket and put it in her bowl. Pork and cabbage, I said. How do you know? The margin note beside the arrow on page 3. She froze for a second, then bowed her head to eat. Her ears were red. This time her neck was flushed too. I leaned back in my chair. This evening felt different from all the others. No anger. No frustration. No messy tug-of-war. Just 2 people having dinner together. She finished, then washed the dishes. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe and watched her. She fumbled with the dish soap. Squeezing out too much, bubbles flooded the sink. She reached for a bowl. Slipped. Almost dropped it. Caught it with a small ah. Foam splattered on her face. A white blob on her nose. Rebecca. Yeah. She turned, not wiping the foam off her nose. That first line in the notebook. When did you write it? She turned off the faucet. The water stopped, and the kitchen fell suddenly quiet. The bubbles slowly subsided, revealing the shapes of the dishes beneath. The night you pulled me down, she said. 4 in the morning. I found a convenience store and bought this notebook. The cashier asked what it was for. I said I was writing a suicide note. She wiped her hands and turned to face me. The apron strings had come loose, hanging down at her sides. I kept writing. And then I didn't want to die anymore. My throat tightened. Breath caught in my chest. And page 2. Written the next day. Page 3. The third day. Why did you write one page every day? She walked over and stood in front of me. Her fingers still smelled of lemon dish soap. She looked up at me. Close enough that I could see her lashes. Not particularly thick, but long. Because I didn't know how long I'd live. She said softly, I wanted to give myself one thing to do every day. 1 page a day. Until I couldn't write anymore. Eventually. Everything I wrote was about you. After page 1. I remembered something else the next day. Something else the day after. More and more. Eventually I realized I'd been thinking about the same thing for 3 years. What? The hand that pulled me. Your hand was so warm. It was freezing on that rooftop. I was numb all over. But the hand that grabbed me was warm. She lowered her head, pressing her forehead to my chest. Light as a feather. I could hear her breathing. Steady. Soft. Leo. 7 million is a lot. Yeah. But I don't want to run anymore. Yeah. Because I'm not done eating yet. I raised my hand and placed it on the back of her head. Her hair was soft. Freshly washed. Shampoo scent mixed with lemon dish soap. Then take your time, I said. She buried her face in my chest and gave a muffled response. Outside. Clouds half veiled the moon. The living room light was warm yellow, falling on the back of her neck. The drawer was still open. The notebook open to page 7. The blue-black ink glinting under the light. Tomorrow. Page 8. The day after. Page 9. I looked down at the tiny mole on her neck, half hidden by her hair. I'd never noticed it before. Probably because she'd never stood this close. Rebecca. Yeah. Tomorrow I'm making the dumplings. Yeah. All you have to do is eat. She didn't answer. But her hands came around from behind me. Slowly. Gently. And clasped. Her fingers clutched the fabric at the back of my t-shirt. Tight. Like a child afraid of losing something. The dishes were still in the kitchen sink. The bubbles had mostly dissolved, revealing the small blue flower on the bottom of the bowl. They could wait till tomorrow. The day she moved in was a Saturday. 7 a.m. A knock at the door. I went in my slippers. She stood outside. Behind her 3 suitcases, 2 cardboard boxes, and 1 bulging woven bag. She wore a white t-shirt, jeans, sneakers. Her hair was in a ponytail. Her face fully visible. Small. Chin sharp. No makeup. Lips a little pale. Morning, she said. Are you moving in or fleeing? Moving in. She squeezed past me, dragging a suitcase inside. Grab that woven bag for me. I bent down. It was heavy. Who knew what was in it? She made 3 trips, hauling everything into the living room. Then stood in the middle surveying the space. Your place is tiny, she said. Then go back. No. She crouched down, opened the woven bag, and pulled out a rice cooker. I brought my own. Bigger than yours. And a knife set. I got willing. Rebecca. Yeah. What's your monthly salary? After taxes. Around 700. You bought willing knives. She pulled a knife from the box. The blade gleamed in the morning light. Very sharp. Good knives make cutting easier. I learned that. She paused, putting the knife back in the box. From my ex-husband. I took nothing else in the divorce but this knife set. He cooked for me for 5 years. Everything else faded. But I remembered these. I didn't know what to say. She crouched on the floor, unpacking quietly. Leo. Yeah. I'll cook for you from now on. Will it be edible? I'll learn. She set the rice cooker on the counter, shifted it left and right, found a spot. Give me 3. 5 years. It'll be edible. 3 to 5 years. Yeah. She turned, hands on the counter edge, head tilted. Clinging to you for life. What's 3 or 5 years? I leaned against the bedroom doorframe and watched her organize, folding clothes into drawers, stacking books under the coffee table, arranging toiletries in the bathroom. I hadn't expected her to have so little. 2.5 of the 3 suitcases were empty. The closet had plenty of space. She hung a few dresses far apart. A pink toothbrush appeared in the bathroom, and a pink cup with a cat print. That's all you have? I asked. Easily portable, she said, not turning, folding the last t-shirt. I've lived ready to run. The less stuff, the better. She closed the closet. Click. I don't need to run anymore. She turned and smiled. That smile tightened my chest. At noon, we made dumplings. She made the dough, I prepared the filling. She was actually skilled at kneading. Her wrists moved flexibly, turning flour into a smooth ball. She covered it with a damp cloth to rest, then came over to watch me mix the filling. How much ginger? The amount you wrote. What amount did I write? You forgot. I glanced at her. On the back of page 2 of your notebook, pork and cabbage dumplings, 3 knobs of ginger, 1 spoon of salt, 2 spoons of soy sauce, ½ spoon of sesame oil. Her mouth opened. Then her face flushed. Red. From the base of her neck to her earlobes. Did you memorize it? Your writing was so hard it embossed the back of the page. I could read it backwards without trying. She turned her face to the windowsill, where a pothose plant sat. She reached out to touch a leaf, pinching it between her fingers. That was just a joke, she mumbled. Looked pretty serious to me. Shut up. I laughed. Her ears reddened further. That afternoon, we made 40 dumplings. Hers came out flat, unable to stand, crooked on the board. Mine were plump, neatly lined in rows. She stared for a while. Why do yours stand up? You're using too little filling. If I use too much, they break. Then eat less filling. She picked up one of my dumplings, turning it over to study the pleats. Then she tried again. Still flat. Forget it. She set the flat dumpling back on the board. Good enough to eat. As the dumplings boiled, she stood by the pot watching. After 3 boils, they floated up, plump and white, churning in the water. She used a slotted spoon, clumsily scooping, and broke one. She stared at the broken skin leaking broth onto the plate. This one's yours. Why do I get the broken one? Because mine are all intact. She pointed to her flat dumplings. None broken. I looked at her. She was trying not to laugh. Her lips pressed tight. Rebecca. Yeah. You win. She laughed out loud. In that moment, I realized I'd never heard her laugh like that. At the office. She'd smile. Mouth up. Eyes still. Now her eyes curved into crescents. Her whole face lit up. She was beautiful when she smiled. Years younger than her cold self. Completely unlike the woman who'd stood on stage. We sat down with our dumplings. Vinegar on the side. She picked one. Dipped it. Chewed. Too salty. Eat it anyway. Of course. I made them. She picked up another. Cheeks full. I watched her eat from across the table. Why aren't you eating? She asked. Not hungry. You spent all afternoon making them. You're not hungry. Watching you is enough. Her chopsticks paused. She glanced up. Then back down. Eating. Her ears went red again. Outside. Rain began falling. A soft patter against the glass. The living room lights were off, gray daylight poured through the windows, softening her profile. She ate slowly. Small bites. Each one dipped in vinegar. Blown on to cool. Leo. Yeah. Why did you go to that building that night? What? That night. You were drunk. Why that building? I thought about it. I didn't remember much. Just the wind. The sharp liquor. My stumbling steps. That building was the old company site. Maybe I wanted to see it. Maybe I was just passing by. Who knew? I don't know. I said. I just walked there. Had you ever been before? No. That was the first time. She didn't ask again. She finished the last dumpling. Drank some dumpling broth. Then stood to clear the table. Stacking dishes. Passing me. She bent and kissed the top of my head. Like before. Thank you. She said. For what? For walking there that night. She went into the kitchen, the faucet ran. I sat alone at the table. The spot on my head warm. The rain grew heavier outside. Hissing against the pavement. That evening. She sat on the sofa reading, I sat nearby on my phone. A cushion's distance between us. Her book was about corporate restructuring. Margins covered in notes. Page flips were soft, occasionally she'd underline with a pen. Scratch. Scratch. I watched her secretly. Under the lamp. Her profile was still. Lashes shadowing her eyes. She stopped at one page. Reading for a long time. I leaned over. A passage about debt restructuring. Her fingers pressed on the page. Knuckles pale. Rebecca. Yeah. She didn't look up. That $7 million debt. What exactly is it? She closed the book and glanced at me. A flicker of wariness. Quickly gone. She laid the book on her lap. Fingers tracing its spine. My ex-husband used the company name for a joint guarantee. The company collapsed. He couldn't pay. The bank came after me. The divorce agreement split the debt. 60% him. 40% me. But he ran. Didn't pay his 60 either. Banks came after you. Yeah. 3 of them. I was getting a dozen collection calls a day. I changed my number. You changed your number and didn't tell me. If I told you, you'd worry. I looked at her. She opened the book again, pretending to read. But her eyes were unfocused. Rebecca. Yeah. Where's your ex-husband now? No idea. Her voice was flat. Last I heard was 3 years ago. He texted me. I'm sorry. Then the number went dead. Her fingers pressed the page corner, creasing it. Leo. Yeah. Don't go looking for him. I wasn't going to. You were thinking it. I was. She knew me too well. 3 years ago at the company. She'd always known what I was thinking. Back then, being read so easily was uncomfortable. Now it was still uncomfortable. But different. All right. I took the book off her lap and closed it. Stop reading. Bedtime. It's only 9:30. After moving all day. Aren't you tired? She looked at me and suddenly smiled. You care about me. I'm telling you to sleep so I can play games. She stood up, took the book back from me, and hugged it to her chest. Fine. Play your games. I'm going to bed. She shuffled to the bedroom in her bunny slippers. At the door, she stopped and turned. Leo. Yeah. Good night. Good night. The door closed. I heard the rustle of covers. Then the light clicked off. I sat in the living room alone. My phone screen glowed. The game still open. I stared at it. Not moving. Outside, the rain fell on. The next morning, I woke to find her already in the kitchen. The porridge was bubbling, she was chopping pickled vegetables. Clumsy but earnest. Hearing my footsteps, she turned. A grain of rice clung to the corner of her mouth. Morning, she said. Porridge is almost ready. What time did you get up? 6. Insane. It's Saturday. I couldn't sleep. She turned back to chop. When I lived alone, I'd be up at 5 or 6. 2. I'd just lie there till 7. Now I wake up wanting to make something. She paused. Wanting to make something for you. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe, watching her slice pickled vegetables into thin strips and arrange them on a plate. Morning light fell on her shoulder through the white t-shirt. The outline of her shoulder blade was visible. Her sleeves were rolled up. Wrists thin. Her movements earnest and clumsy. Rebecca. Yeah. Take your time. Don't cut yourself. I won't. I practiced. Practiced. Yeah. Her back was to me. Voice lower. When you weren't around, I practiced at home. Chopped up a whole bunch of cucumbers. I was afraid you'd think I was clumsy. I walked over and stood behind her. She was shorter than I thought. Her head reaching my chin. I could smell her hair. A new floral shampoo. Not bad. I said. She didn't turn. But her shoulders relaxed. Then let me do the cooking from now on. You still have a job. I'll cook when I get home. Deal. She finished chopping. Turned to ladle the porridge. As she turned, her shoulder brushed my chest. She paused. Didn't move away. You're in the way, she said. Her ears were red. I stepped aside, she walked past with the bowl. Head down. Moving fast. That morning we sat across from each other and had porridge. She drank quietly. Small sips. Occasionally picking up a strip of pickled vegetable. I drank fast. Finishing half a bowl in 2 gulps. She refilled mine. Eat more. You'll need energy this afternoon. For what? That shelf in your study. I measured. It won't fit my books. We need a new one. You're buying a shelf. Yeah. I found one online. $20. You assemble it. I looked at the woman across from me. She wore my old t-shirt. Sleeves rolled. Hair messily tied. She sat in my chair. Drinking my porridge. Planning my afternoon. So natural. Like she'd always been there. Rebecca. Yeah. Is this how you always were? How? Like this. I gestured vaguely. Planning things out. She thought for a moment. At work? Yes. At home? No. How at home? At home. I followed my ex-husband's plans. She said, her tone flat. What to eat? Where to go? Who to see? I didn't have to think. After he left, I couldn't do anything. Couldn't even decide what takeout to order. She looked up at me. Do you think I'm useless? No. Then what do you think? I think you're a pretty good actor. She blinked, then laughed, shoulders shaking as she lowered her head to drink her porridge. How did you know? At the office. You were all ice and stone. Who would have guessed you don't even know how to cut a green pepper? I was acting, she said. Had to. A female boss who's too soft gets treated like a pushover. And now? She set down her bowl and looked at me. Morning light came from behind her, outlining her in a soft halo. Now I don't have to act, she said. That afternoon, we assembled the shelf. It came in a box, a pile of boards and screws. She pointed at the instructions. I turned the screwdriver. She crouched beside me, handing parts, her fingers brushing mine. Cool. That board is upside down, she said. It's not. The picture shows it that way. The picture's wrong. She tilted her head, comparing. Maybe it is wrong. Are you sure? I'm sure. She flipped the board. That's right. I watched her serious face. Lips slightly pursed. Brow furrowed. Her finger traced the instructions line by line. Rebecca. Yeah. You're beautiful. She froze. The instruction manual dropped. She bent to pick it up, her ears burning red. Don't start. I mean it. She held the manual up to cover her face. Just work. I couldn't see her face, but her fingers gripping the manual were white. It rained that afternoon. The shelf was assembled, standing in the corner of the study. She arranged her books on it, neatly, from tallest to shortest. She stood before it for a while, reaching up to touch the top shelf. This is my shelf, she said softly. Yeah. She turned to face me, eyes bright. Leo. Thank you. For what? Thank you for giving me a shelf. She walked over and hugged me. Lightly. Carefully. As if holding too tight would break me. Her face pressed into my chest, her hair brushing my chin. I could feel her heartbeat. Thump. 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 Against my chest. There's room for more shelves, I said. She didn't speak, just held a little tighter. That night, I played games. She sat beside me reading. The volume was low. Occasionally I cursed, and she'd glance up, then go back to reading. The living room light was warm yellow, the rain still falling outside. She reached a certain page and wrote something in the margin. I leaned over to look. She covered it with her hand. No peeking. What did you write? In the notebook. Page 8. She didn't answer, but her lips curved. She closed the book, held it to her chest, and sat cross-legged on the sofa, looking at me. Leo. Yeah. You're done for. I know. She smiled, head tilted, eyes curved. What was on page 8? I read it later. While she was asleep. She slept deeply, breathing even, lashes resting peacefully. I crept to the living room, opened the coffee table drawer, and took out the little notebook. The leather was cool. Page 8. Her handwriting was neater than before. The strokes smoother, less pressed. It read, "Moved into his house today. He gave me a shelf. I'm going to fill it." Below, a smaller line. So tiny it was almost illegible. "I discovered today that he secretly watches me." I closed the notebook, put it back, and walked into the bedroom. She was still sleeping, turned toward my side. The blanket had slipped off. I pulled it back over her. She shifted, mumbling something in her sleep, the tone soft. "Yeah," I answered softly. I wasn't sure if she heard. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting a silver patch on the bedroom floor. And so the days went on. Nothing earth-shattering. She got off work at 6. Arrived home at 6:35. Changed into slippers. And went to the kitchen. I'd hear the sounds from the living room. Faucet running. Knife chopping. Range hood humming. Then she'd call. "Leo, bring me a plate." I'd hand her a plate, she'd dish up the steaming food and hand it back. "Take it out. Fill the bowls." I'd fill the bowls. Set the chopsticks, she'd take off her apron. We'd sit across from each other and eat. She washed the dishes, I wiped the table. Sometimes, she'd be mid-wash, and I'd walk over to stand behind her, chin resting on her shoulder. "You're blocking the light." "Yeah." "Move." "No." She'd elbow me lightly. I'd step back half a step, and her ears would be red. Her washing would slow. She'd turn a bowl in her hands 3 times. "Rebecca." "Yeah." "How was work today?" "Fine. I saw your message from this morning. Didn't reply because I was in a meeting." "I know." "Why did you send that cat emoji?" "Saw a cat that looked like you." She looked back at me. "How?" "The eyes." She set the washed bowl in the drying rack, wiped her hands, and turned to face me, close enough that I could smell the lemon dish soap and her own faint warm scent. "Leo," she said. "Yeah." "How many girlfriends have you had?" "Why do you ask?" "I want to know." "None." "Really? Really? Code monkeys don't have time for romance." She tilted her head. "Then how are you so good at it?" "At what?" "At making people want to stay." I was stumped. What did I do? I just did what came naturally. Left the door open. Set the table. Sat with her when she had nightmares. Nothing extraordinary. "I don't know," I said. She looked at me for a few seconds, then reached up and ruffled my hair. "Idiot." Her fingers slipped through my hair, her palm warm against my head. It reminded me of how my mom used to mess with my hair. My nose suddenly stung. I turned away, pretending to look out the window. "Leo." "Yeah." "What J Cho song do you hum when you cook?" "I don't hum." "You do. Last time you made boiled beef, you hummed Common Jasmine Orange." "I didn't." "You did." "Fine. I did." "What about it?" "Nothing." She hung the apron back on its hook, rising on her toes. "From now on, I'll listen while you cook." "Don't." I sing off key. "I want to." She actually sat on the bar stool beside the counter and listened while I cooked. I'd chop, she'd swing her legs. I'd stir-fry, she'd rest her chin on her hands. I'd taste, she'd lean in for a bite. Between the hum of the range hood and the soft rustle of her slippers on the stool. The kitchen was warm. A thin sheen of sweat on her nose. Too salty. I held out the spoon. She tasted. Smacked her lips. Perfect. Did you add sugar? A little. Last time your ribs didn't have enough. I remember. She looked at me. A spark in her eyes. You remember. You said it 3 times. How could I not? She smiled. Hopped off the stool. And filled the rice bowls. Pressing the rice firm. When she handed it to me, she said, "Eat more. You've lost weight." I haven't. You have. Your waist is thinner. You touched it. She paused. Thrust the bowl into my hands. And turned to get the chopsticks. Forget it. But I saw her ears turn red. On weekends. We went grocery shopping together. She pushed the cart, I walked beside her. She was meticulous. Checking dates. Reading ingredients. Comparing prices. Half a minute per item. Were you always this thorough? Not before. My ex used to push the cart. He never looked at prices. Then why now? She turned over an egg carton to check the date. Swapped it for a fresher one. Because now every dollar has to count. 7 million hanging there. I can't even cover the monthly interest. Her tone was flat. As if remarking on the weather. But her knuckles were white on the cart handle. Rebecca. Yeah. I looked into that debt. She looked up. Her eyes changed. Wary. What did you find? Your ex-husband's company registration. When he signed the joint guarantee, he used the company's seal. But the company had already been transferred to a third party before liquidation. That guarantee might not be valid. She was silent for a few seconds. The cart stopped in front of the freezer aisle, cold air rushed out. Hitting her face. How did you look into that? I'm in tech. Public records aren't hard to find. Why did you look? Because I don't want you tossing and turning at night. She looked down at the items in the cart. Tomatoes. Scallions. Tofu. Neatly stacked. Leo. Yeah. You don't need to get involved. I said I'd handle it. How? $700 a month. Can't even cover interest. I'll pay slowly. 3 years. 5. 10. Eventually. And what do you do for the next 10 years? Eat my cooking every night. Drain your paycheck. And still owe the bank in your old age. She didn't answer. Her fingers clenched and unclenched on the cart handle. Don't interfere. She said. I will. What gives you the right? Because of what you wrote in that notebook. She looked up. Her eyes were red. But she held it back. That notebook was just a joke. You wrote someone's name over 3 years. And it was a joke. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Rebecca. Do you take me for an idiot? She pressed her lips together. Silent. Freezer air blew her loose hair around her face. All right. I took the card. Let's go home. She followed. Slow. At the checkout. She suddenly pulled the hem of my t-shirt. Leo. Yeah. That guarantee. Are you sure it might not be valid? 80% sure. But I'm not a lawyer. You need a professional. She let go of my shirt. Was silent for a moment. I'll ask the legal counsel from my old company. She opened her own firm. Good. She pulled out her wallet. I'm paying for groceries today. Fine. She paid and walked beside me carrying the bags. Crossing the street. She fell half a step behind. I turned to wait. She caught up, hooking her pinky around mine. Cool. Light. I didn't speak. She didn't either. We crossed the whole street like that. That night, she messaged the old legal counsel. After sending it, she put her phone face down and went to shower. Water ran. I was on the sofa when her phone lit up. A message, come to my office tomorrow. We'll talk. I turned the phone away and didn't read it. She came out of the shower. Hair wet. Wrapped in a towel. She glanced at the phone. Sat on the arm of the sofa. And wrung water from her hair. She says we can talk tomorrow. Yeah. Leo. Yeah. Do you want this debt to be invalid? Of course. Why? Because I don't want to watch your paycheck get cut in half. She wrung her towel. Water dripping onto the floor. If the debt goes away, will you feel like you have no obligation anymore? Will you not need me anymore? I looked up. She was looking at the towel. Not at me. Rebecca. I said. Do you think I'd let you move in because of obligation? Then why? She put the towel down and turned to face me. After her shower. Her skin was dewy. Lips pink. Her expression was serious. Tense. Even. I stood up. She was on the sofa arm, I stood in front of her. Having to look down. Because you wrote that notebook. I said. Because you wrote my name over 100 times. Because when you come to dinner, you always sit in the same seat. Because you brought 3 suitcases and 2.5 were empty. Because you hum Rewind when you wash dishes. Because after your nightmares, you sit in the living room thinking I don't know. Her mouth opened. How do you know I come out when I can't sleep. She stared at me. Her eyes reddened, she couldn't stop it. A tear slid from the corner of her eye. Down her cheek to her chin. She didn't wipe it. Leo. Yeah. Do you like me? Page 8 said. He was secretly watching me today. You were secretly watching me. I was watching openly. She sniffled. Another tear fell. She wiped it with her sleeve. Wet. So. Do you like me? You'll find out on the last page. How many pages is that? Until it's finished. She stood up and hit my chest lightly. You're messing with me. No. You are. Then stop writing. She glared at me. Tears still clinging to her lashes. But the corners of her lips were lifting. I'll write. She said. When I'm done. You'll read it. Fine. She turned and walked to the bedroom. Before closing the door, she looked back. Just wait. For what? For me to finish. The door closed. Her voice came muffled through the wood. You won't get away. I stood in the living room. The pothose on the windowsill had sprouted new leaves. Tender. Glowing. Get away. I'd never planned to. The next day, she met with the lawyer. When she came back, her expression was complicated. She sat at the table for a while. Blank. What did she say? I asked. She says the guarantee might have flaws. She set her bag on the table, leaning back. But it requires a lawsuit. Legal fees. Over $1,000. 1,000 versus 700,000. Which is bigger? 700,000. Then we fight. She looked at me. You're paying the legal fees. I'll find the lawyer. I'll pay. Your monthly salary. 800. I know. I set the food on the table. I've been saving for years. Was going to use it for a down payment. The house can wait. The lawsuit can't. She was silent for a long time. The steam from the food rose between us, blurring her face. Leo, she said. Voice hoarse. Yeah. I don't deserve this. Whether you deserve it is for me to decide. I handed her chopsticks. Heat. The food's getting cold. She took the chopsticks and bowed her head. 2 bites in. Her chopsticks stopped. Tears dripped into her bowl. What's wrong? Nothing. She sniffled, scooping rice with her chopsticks. It's good. You put in just the right amount of salt. I sat across from her, watching her finish the entire bowl. Tears mixed with the rice, scraping the last few grains clean. Rebecca, I said. Yeah. She looked up. Red eyes. Red nose. No more crying. Just eat. I'm not crying. She wiped her face with her sleeve. Got sand in my eye. The windows are closed. Then open one. Let the sand in so I have an excuse. I stood up and opened the window. June wind rushed in. Humid. Carrying the scent of gardenias from downstairs. She sniffled, stood with her empty bowl, and walked toward the kitchen. At the doorway, she stopped, her back to me. Leo. Yeah. Whatever you want from now on. I'll give it to you. Take care of yourself first. I'm serious. I know. I said. Wash the dishes first. She stood there for 2 seconds. Then the faucet turned on. Water rushing. I leaned against the doorframe and watched her. She was more practiced now. Her movements cleaner. When she finished and dried her hands, she came over and stood in front of me, looking up. Leo. Yeah. She reached out and hugged me, face against my chest. I looked down and saw a white hair among the black. I pulled it out. She winced. What are you doing? White hair. You pulled it. Yeah. She looked up from my chest. Is it ugly? No. I held the fine, soft hair up to the light. I just saw it and pulled it. Don't pull my white hairs. Then what do I do? Leave them. You just look at them. Fine. She buried her face back in my chest and laughed softly. The lawsuit lasted 4 months. In 4 months, she lost weight. Her chin grew sharper. Up at 6 every morning. Meeting with lawyers. Gathering bank records. Digging through business registration files. She'd come home with dark circles under her eyes. But at the door, she'd take a breath, put on a smile, and walk in. What's for dinner? Braised pork. Smells so good. She'd set down her bag, change her slippers, and give me a quick hug from behind. 1 second. 2. 3. Then let go and go wash her hands. Rebecca. Yeah. Tell me if you're tired. I'm not. You were up till 3 a.m. You checked my phone. It was glowing all night. I didn't have to check. She was silent. Water ran over her hands. After a moment, she turned off the tap, dried her hands, and stood beside me to watch me cook. Leo. Yeah. What if we lose? Then we pay. If interest is high, we refinance. If your salary isn't enough, I'll help. Worst case, we sell the house. She was quiet. The braised pork bubbled in the pot, the scent of soy sauce and sugar filling the kitchen. Why would you do all this? Because you're Rebecca. What about Rebecca? Rebecca wrote 32 pages of a notebook claiming me. I can't let her stop halfway and run. She reached her arms around me from behind, her face pressed to my shoulder blade, breathing softly. Leo. Yeah. If we win, I'll marry you. The spatula paused. Hot oil splashed on my hand. I didn't feel it. And if we lose? If we lose, I'll marry you anyway. But I'd feel guilty. Then don't lose. She rubbed her face against my back. Okay. The day the braised pork came out, she ate a whole bowl. Sauce on her lips. Cheeks full. Eating happily. Slow down. Delicious, she said. Mouth full. Even better than last time. Swallow before you talk. She swallowed. Drank some water. Leo. When did you learn to make braised pork? When you said you wanted it. When did I say that? Page 11 of your notebook. She choked. You read the whole thing. No. Skipped around. She stared at me. You skipped through my private stuff. You left it in my coffee table drawer. That counts as private. She made a sound. Kept eating braised pork. Her ears were red. Rebecca. Yeah. How many pages does that notebook have? Guess. 30. More. 50. She smiled but didn't answer. How many exactly? Enough until you can't run away. I already can't. Not enough yet. She put a piece of pork in my bowl. Looked up at me. Eyes bright. Until you don't want to run. Outside. October. Osmanthus blooming. Wind carried the fragrance in from the balcony, mixing with the braised pork's savory aroma. Strange. But warm. The verdict came in November. She didn't let me go with her. Wait for me at home, she said, and walked out with her bag. I took the day off, sitting in the living room from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Phone in hand. Screen on and off. On and off. At 3:12. A text, we won. 2 words. I stared at it for 10 seconds. Another message, guarantee invalid. No debt. I stood up. Legs weak. My knee hit the coffee table. I called her. She answered in 3 seconds. Where are you? At the door. I ran and pulled it open. She stood there in her gray dress, bag in hand, red eyes, but smiling. Rebecca. Yeah. Come in and close the door. She stepped in and shut the door. I wrapped my arms around her. Tight. Her whole body trembled. Then she hugged me back. Her face pressed into my shoulder. Shoulders heaving. This time, she cried out loud. Muffled sobs into my shirt. Hot and wet. Leo. Yeah. 700,000 is gone. Yeah. I don't have to pay. Yeah. I can finally eat properly. She looked up. Face streaked with tears. But she was smiling. A messy smile. Lips trembling. Eyes blazing. I can cling to you for real now. You were already doing that. It's different. She wiped her face. Before, I was clinging with debt. Now I'm clinging clean. I wiped her tears with my thumb. Cool on her cheekbone. You're ugly when you cry. Shut up. Fine. What do you want to eat today? Anything. Whatever you make. Hot pot. Yes. She let go and went to the bathroom to wash her face. Water ran. I stood in the living room, feeling pounds lighter. That night, we had hot pot. Red broth bubbling. She added tripe. Duck blood. Enoki mushrooms. She ate with sweat on her forehead. Face flushed. Still shoveling in more. Slow down. I'm happy, she said, picking up another piece of tripe. I haven't been this happy in 3 years. She dipped it in sesame oil and held it to my lips. You eat too. I took a bite. Spicy. Made me inhale. Good. Good. She smiled and went back to cooking. Steam rose around her face, her eyes sparkling behind the mist. Leo. Yeah. Tomorrow I'm taking you somewhere. Where? You'll see. The next day, she took me to the rooftop. The building was still there, now rented out as offices. She'd somehow arranged for the rooftop door to be open. When we walked up, the wind was strong. November cold like a knife. She walked to the edge and looked down. I pulled her back. Don't go so close. Look! She pointed down. That night, you ran out from that stairwell. I remember you were wearing a black puffer jacket, unzipped, with a plaid shirt underneath. How do you remember so clearly? I remember everything. She turned to face me, wind whipping her hair. That night, I stood here. The wind was so cold. I thought if I jumped, it would all be over. Then I heard someone call me. You called out. Your voice was hoarse, like you'd been crying. I wasn't crying. That was the alcohol. You tripped running over. I was drunk. You got up and kept running. She looked at me. Wind blowing into her collar, she shivered. When you grabbed my arm, your hand was so warm. You pulled me down and sat beside me. You didn't say anything. I did. What did you say? I didn't remember clearly. Too drunk. But under her gaze, I searched my memory and pulled out a few words. I said, cold. Just that. She blinked, then laughed. Right. You said cold. Then you took off your jacket and put it on me. You were left in a thin shirt, shivering in the wind. What happened to that jacket? I kept it. Had it cleaned. It's still in my closet. You didn't throw it out. No, she said. I never threw away anything you gave me. She turned, back against the railing, facing me. The wind blew stray strands across her face. Leo. Yeah. The moment you pulled me down from this rooftop, I decided. Decided what? Decided it was you for life. I looked at her face. November wind cold. Her nose red. Her lips pale. But she stood straight. Her eyes bright. Rebecca. Yeah. Are you cold? Yes. I took off my jacket and put it over her shoulders. Just like 3 years ago. She looked down at the collar and laughed. You're not drunk this time. No. Then say something you didn't say then. What? Say you like me. The wind howled, the rooftop door banged. Her hair whipped like a flag. I looked into her eyes. Her pupils reflected the gray-white sky. Rebecca. Yeah. I like you. I like you from the first time you walked through my door. She sniffled. This time she didn't cry. She smiled. A real smile. her whole face glowing, eyes curving into crescents. I know, she said. How? Because the day after you made those 2 salty ribs, you made them again. And you got the sugar right that time. I watched you measure it. 3 times. I sat across from you and watched you measure sugar 3 times. She stepped forward, toes touching mine. After the 3rd time, I knew. You knew then. Yeah. Then why did you keep coming? Waiting for you to say it. She smiled. 3 months. Today you finally did. She stood on tiptoe and kissed my lips. Light, but a half second longer than the forehead kiss. Her lips were cool, wind-chapped. Then she stepped back, pulling the jacket tighter. Let's go home, she said. I'm hungry. What do you want? Anything you make. We went downstairs. She walked ahead, I followed. She stopped suddenly, turning back. Leo. Yeah. Every year on this day. Let's come here. Why? To thank the wind that night. She smiled. Thank it for blowing you here. Epilogue. The last page of the notebook was written on December 31st. We were sitting in the living room for New Year's Eve. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching. She was curled on the sofa, leaning against my shoulder, holding the little brown notebook. The cover was even more worn, the edges more frayed, a small crack along the spine from being opened so many times. She wrote on the last page. I watched her write. Her pen scratched softly against the paper. When she finished, she closed it and wouldn't show me. Not yet. When can I see? Tomorrow, she said. When the New Year's bell rings. Outside, someone was setting off fireworks. Whoosh. Bang. Red. Green. Gold reflected in the window glass. She leaned against my shoulder, breathing evenly. When the bell chimed, she sat up and handed me the notebook. Now. I opened the last page. Her handwriting was as forceful as the first page, each stroke pressing deep into the paper. It said, Leo, I'm going to cling to you for life. Until you can't write anymore either. Until your hair turns white. Until the hands that pulled me down can't hold chopsticks anymore. I'll still cling. If you get annoyed, don't run. Because I've put locks on every door. I have the keys. You can't get away. Below. Even smaller, thank you for walking by that night. Outside. The fireworks continued. Bang. 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 Illuminating the living room in flashes. She sat beside me, holding my hand, her palm warm. Finished? She asked. Finished. Thoughts. Your handwriting is better than before. And. I turned to look at her. She tilted her head, waiting, eyes bright. And. Rebecca. Yeah. You chose the right person. She smiled, softly, and leaned in, resting her forehead against my shoulder. I know, she said. I've always known. Outside, fireworks exploded. Loud. She said something in my ear, but I couldn't hear it. It didn't matter. I could ask tomorrow. We had a whole lifetime. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.